welcome to Property Matters here in Dublin South FM. You can contact the show on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at iProperty Radio, or email at hello@ipropertyradio.com. Your host today is Carol Talon and myself, Brian Fox. First up today, we're joined by Graham Murray of Sherry FitzGerald to discuss the property market and how estate agents have adapted to ongoing restrictions on home buyers and sellers. So, Graham, you're very welcome. So,
hi, Brian. Hi, Carol.
Good. I suppose the first thing to ask you is, with the market booming as it is, how's it faring?
Well, I suppose long and short of it is, it's been an incredibly busy market since we come out of our last lockdown throughout Ireland. And really we're back to pre-pandemic transaction levels of activity across our different businesses, I suppose. We've seen incredible growth throughout the year. And I suppose that's really come on the back of people reassessing of what they wanted in terms of their property needs coming out of COVID and coming out of lockdown. So a lot of people then coming out, maybe they've been living in an apartment for the last while over kind of lockdown, really looking for more space. Whether that be in Dublin or further afield, in terms of we've sold a lot of properties now for families, couples, individuals who kind of traded out of Dublin, traded all around our countryside. And indeed within Dublin, people looking for either extra bedroom space or additional accommodation around like a home office. And in the main, actually, a lot of people looking for larger garden space, outdoor space, and close to kind of, I suppose, parks and other outdoor facilities.
Well, what do you attribute to the sudden burst of energy in the market? Because I know we had a year where there was, very little going on, and people were kind of upset with and routines were upset with all the lockdown talk and cases in hospital. So, I mean, it seemed as if the tap turned on in March or April, when particularly viewing restrictions were lifted.
Yeah, well, I think if you take it just a little bit of context, before we went into lockdown and COVID hit worldwide, the market was already incredibly busy. So we were already seeing a time and a place where people were actively buying and actively selling. We went through a period of lockdown, people reassessed their needs in terms of what they wanted. There was certainly, I suppose, for many businesses, uncertainty around what was going to happen. And inevitably, there was kind of a bit of a slowdown there. But as soon as we came out, you have to remember as well, actually, in the lockdown for this year, we were able to do all of our viewings virtually. So we did loads of virtual walkthroughs. We did a lot of kind of transactions were done over video. And then actually kind of kickstart that market very quickly. So what it felt like...
Without actual physically seeing the apartment?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you lots of different stories from colleagues or even myself carrying out set up appointments, do the video tours online. You can have 6-7 people book into that viewing, going through the whole thing, answering all the questions, and then getting into a bidding process then thereafter. So what you do need to remember as well, that when we came out, it kind of felt like it all just happened really quickly when the shutters were lifted. But we were actually working away in the background by going out, getting properties available, putting it onto the market according to all the guidelines and restrictions at the time, then doing all the virtual videos and going sale agreed on properties and moving the market forward. So that was actually happening there, but it kind of felt like March, April, as you mentioned, turn on and tap, all of a sudden this was happening. There was a prelude to it or a prelogue to it in terms of what was happening. So a lot of the stock that was available got taken up very quickly. And then as we move forward, then you're then trying to bring on new property to meet that existing demand and continuing demand for people who came out of lockdown.
But Carol, just before you come in, isn't that like, buying a car, say a used car, for instance, and just buying it on spec, not looking under the bonnet?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I think once the property actually goes sale agreed, you've got to remember, a lot of people who are buying homes are going sale agreed in that process would be quite familiar with a lot of the properties they'd be looking at. So, for example, you would sell kind of like a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom semi-D, maybe in an estate or within a development. A lot of people either grew up in these houses, they're renting in the area, so they actually know them quite well. So really the video allowed them to walk through and see what this actual house was. And of course, there'll be situations, maybe of one-off houses, individual houses, where there may be some items that wouldn't come across, like you'd have to wait to get your survey done. But you can still go ahead. That's like any bidding process, I would have thought, whether it's virtual or in person. You come in, you look at the house, and then you go sale agreed and you do your due diligence by getting a survey done. That's exactly the same type of process. It was very much a case of, Brian, whether you were comfortable with that process or not comfortable with that process as a buyer and indeed a vendor. But from what we could see, we had a huge amount of people coming through, doing the videos and going sale agreed and moving the sale forward.
Okay, Graham, is it too early to tell yet, or do you know the properties that were sale agreed, and even where contracts issued, it was done subject to then in-person viewing. So have you any indication of the fall through rate? So of those sale agreed during that period that it was exclusively online, do we know what percentage fell through?
I couldn't give you an exact one. I know when we were doing this last time around in our first lockdown, we had about 1 in 3, I think it was. We're kind of going through a phase of either coming out of the agreement or renegotiation on it. Next time round, that level is even less than that, I suppose, again, as well. Because don't forget, in that last phase that we went through, people were already back out and looking to kind of move forward. So I suppose they just gotten used to that process. So we actually didn't have a huge amount in terms of fall through rates. And if we did have one, it was actually re-agreed very quickly by going back into the open market again as well.
Yeah, in terms of the technology enabling that, obviously we've been beating the drum looking for greater adoption of technology right across the built environment. But one of the things that digital transformation, irrespective of the sector, one of the most important elements and maybe the least predictable one is the culture shift, the change and the human behaviour. Now, COVID really focused that. So whether it was maybe estate agents that were slightly less enthusiastic about technology, whether it was buyers that were less trusting of it, or indeed sellers maybe who were just less aware of it. The culture shift, everybody just had to get on board during COVID. How has that been?
I think it's interesting, there's probably a couple of things. With our own business, we'd already started investing in technology early. So actually, when we had our first lockdown, we actually, literally within 24 hours, everyone was on laptops, mobile. So it was actually, we made that shift very quickly. But I think actually buyers adapted to the process very quickly. I think like any new technology that you meet or any shift, as you mentioned, culturally about how you buy something or do something can be a little bit slow to adopt. But right now, there is no issues whatsoever. Like if we look at you'll be aware of our own buying platform, mysherryfitz.ie, but like 50%, nearly 50% of all our sale agreeds now are coming through the platform itself. Buyers love it because it's incredibly transparent. You can see what's actually happening, you get live updates, and you can use it 24 hours a day. So I think even by that as a measure of success, it is a very good one. So 50% of our kind of deals are going through it. So I think that's a really strong measure of both the cultural shift, as you mentioned, the company adapting to the market itself, and the buyers indeed adapting to it as well. But there's lots of other things, like we talked about the technology piece around videos. That was before lockdown, that was prohibitively expensive to actually do. So you only actually saw a lot of maybe the upper end home markets doing it. Whereas now you can do it for your 1-bedroom apartment because people understand the benefit of it. And really from a vendor's point of view, adopting it, the video is brilliant because you may not get as much quantity of people through now, but the quality of what you're bringing through is way stronger because people already have an idea of what they're coming to see by going through it on the video. So actually, people coming through, the quality is so much stronger. So they already have a fair idea of actually what they're coming to view. It's just that kind of in-person viewing then that kind of, I suppose they can confirm whether it's for them or not.
Yeah.
And likewise,
the quality is a really strong one there because actually, one estate agents across the board, this isn't directed at Sherry FitzGerald, but estate agents across the board have definitely fallen victim to being busy fools, where you had people coming, prospective buyers, maybe who hadn't even started their mortgage process. They were just doing the work in person that they ought to have been doing online, doing the research, so actually getting a not just better quality of buyer, but by that I mean a more committed to the concept of buying, if they find the right property. That has to be a positive. But how much of the culture change and behavioural change that we've seen, how much of that do you think will remain? Do you think it will stay at that level post-COVID?
I think so. I think people are incredibly adaptable, and all markets move forward, whether it's property, car markets, whatever it may be. Every single market you work with either adapts to technology or starts to fall behind it. So I think from our point of view, as I kind of mentioned, all those offers coming through, that's a clear indication that that's where the market is going. If it wasn't that strong, you might revisit some of the items that you're doing. It was a very clear indicator. Now, it'll never take away from the human element of the agency involved with the client, both the vendor and indeed the buyer as well, because there's a huge amount of, I suppose, going on the journey with people, whether you're a vendor or indeed a buyer as well. But technology enables things to be that bit easier. It enables, I suppose, quicker feedback. And I suppose that's the world we live in nowadays, is everybody's contactable 24/7 and people just want to engage. But I don't think we see any change. I think videos are definitely here to stay. As I said, I would encourage every client to do one. I think the quality is brilliant on them. It's much more affordable. And I think as well, if you look at some of the other aspects of technology that are coming, like everything we can do online now, there's no more paperwork. Like I can engage with clients across the world, send out all our service agreements, ID, everything can be done online now. So there's no reason for that, but it won't take away from that interaction, the one-on-one interaction. And actually, you know, we haven't done open viewings now in years really now at this stage.
I'm so delighted
and
to
actually,
hear that. Buyers hate open viewings.
I think, you know, if we're all honest with ourselves, you know, having 30 people through at a viewing in half an hour or an hour is difficult to manage from everybody's point of view. I love the fact that what we've been doing over the last while has been very much one-on-one or you know, 2 households every 15 minutes. It is so much better from a level of engagement and indeed a much better level of service that you're giving both to buyer and indeed your client as well. So from my personal point of view, I think that's a really good thing in terms of how we've been able to kind of deal with the viewings. I'd like to see a lot of that kind of staying, I suppose.
Yeah, and then that's a really positive thing. When we talk about bringing more technology into the property transaction, you know, it is really important to point out that, you know, we do appreciate that property has always been a people-based business, you know, because there's a nuance there you have to really understand. And
absolutely.
Buyers and sellers themselves don't know this until they start into the process. But you mentioned something in the context of videos that I'd love to challenge you on, maybe in terms of the bidding, because, you know, you mentioned there that prior to COVID, not all properties were having videos done. It was just cost prohibitive. So obviously when that had to happen, they had videos and the offerings are there. So in my mind, it's just a case that estate agents took better advantage of them, which is great. But in terms of bidding, prior to COVID, online bidding platforms, when I spoke to estate agents around the country, they might say to me things like, yes, we're open to using online bidding, but not all properties are suitable for it. And there is an element of that in rural areas. But we saw so many more properties that previously wouldn't have been put forward for online bidding platforms. Actually, online bidding platforms were being used, and they've been so successful in the last 18 months. Do you think there's been maybe a bit of a shift in thinking in the industry around these?
I think, when you look at, I suppose, online bidding platforms, there's probably like private treaty, and then there's the auction method of both there. So
private treaty,
yeah, okay.
The private treaty.
I just think, like, for a lot of people, like, if you listen to what the consumer is looking for, and I think this is where all technology should be delivered from, it's what the consumer is looking for. So be that with the buyer or be that the vendor. That's where a lot of your advancements and, I suppose, improvements can be made within any industry. So it's very much consumer-led. The consumers are telling us they want access to be able to bid on a property 24/7. Fine. They want access in terms of transparency. They want to be able to see when other people are bidding and that as well. And that's fine. I would agree, it's maybe not always suitable for every single property in the marketplace. And, you know, even our own kind of platform allows for that. Like, it's always there. You can bid on it if you wish, but not all people want to engage with it. And that's absolutely fine. But you'll probably find people who are tech savvy, or maybe, I don't want to kind of be ageist, but maybe of a certain age, are more kind of used to doing these things. And that's where we see our kind of our top level of engagement coming through. But I just think as an industry, everyone adapts to circumstance. And I think at the moment, that's where technology is bringing us. It's enabling us to do a lot more. Like, I remember, you know, pre-COVID, you'd do a video tour off your phone with a client from America and stuff like that. But you'd always insist then that they have a family friend or somebody like that walk the property. It's not really that way anymore. And we see plenty of people buying from abroad, very happy to do so based on videos on their own interaction.
They'd be investors though, Graham, wouldn't they? They wouldn't necessarily be buying for themselves.
They'd be both, Brian. They'd be both, actually. So you've got people buying for investment. So it makes their life incredibly easy now. Right. And then indeed, if you're buying from a family home and if you talk to our colleagues all around the country, they would definitely be doing things that are cross, I suppose, non-person videos, and they're buying, whether it's a relocation property, a kind of a holiday home, or indeed their family home actually as well. So yes, you might have more interactions on certain buyer profiles, a certain area, but it is across the board in general. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really positive one, because one of the things we've seen is that the property industry has been criticised for being quite opaque. It was lacking transparency, and over the past decade, there's been huge move towards improving the transparency, which actually helps to build trust. So seeing with online bidding platforms that buyers particularly, can watch the bidding process and they get alerts when there's competing bids entered. So this has to improve the trust factor. So is that having an impact on the relationships? As in, is it improving the relationships then with both buyers and sellers?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree from that. And I think, trust is one of the predominant things that comes out of this. If you can trust the agent, trust the process, you're much more likely to engage with the whole process. So I think for us, again, listening to what the consumer had told us, that is what they wanted out of this. And I think if you're engaged with your buyers and your vendors and they trust you, then you're much more likely to continuously engage with you. And let's say it never takes away from the human interaction. Like, it's great, there's the bidding, we can see it, but they're more inclined then to pick up the phone and have the chat with you then as well, and vice versa as well. So trust is a huge element to it. That's what transparency, I believe, brings in all cases, is trust.
Yeah, and that's such an important one. Graham, at the top of the interview, you talked about part of the process that estate agents are going through now at the moment is helping buyers and sellers to reassess their needs. Now, we don't know yet what the full fallout of COVID-19 is going to be in terms of how people want to live, the choices they make, and the priorities. But what are you seeing so far?
It's interesting now. We've got a situation where a lot of people are going back to work. Offices, I suppose commercial space and that as well. So, and again, people are going through change at the moment. I could talk to a variety of different people, whether it be friends or colleagues. I'm back 5 days a week, I'm back 2 days a week, I'm back 1 day a month. So you have a whole kind of, I suppose, options on people, how they're going to work moving forward. So, but we've already seen people whose businesses have already gone early and said, you don't need to come back into the office, or you can come back to the office a couple of days a month or 2 days, whatever it may be. And they've made their property decisions based on that type of information. So I've had colleagues deal with sellers who've completely sold up and moved very far down the country because it allows them to work completely remotely. I've had buyers recently coming from abroad, 2 European buyers who work in large kind of pharmaceutical companies, and they're allowed to work remotely, and they've chosen Ireland, Dublin as their place to be based and work from now as well. We've also got people who are selling and actually then just holding a base in Dublin. So they may need, down the line, I'm still going to need a kind of a base within Dublin. So they might buy a smaller house, an apartment that gives them that base and that freedom to do both then as well. You've got people moving to commuter belts, and that's where you can see the price rises happening quite sharply now around Dublin as well, because they can easily commute in and out of Dublin, that as well. And then equally, people based within Dublin or towns and that as well, and they're going for more space. They love Dublin as it is. You still have everything, the reason why people love living in Dublin, but they just want more space now. So they know, actually, do you know what? I can work in the office 3 days a week, 4 days a week, but I can do 1 day at home. So I need a home office space. I need to convert the attic. I need larger garden space around, because we now as a family are generally spending more time together. So whether that be another reception room on top of that as well. And also that lifestyle piece, I think, is huge. I think it's funny how people are like, okay, public transport, will it be as important? It's going to be hugely important for any city as it goes forward. And people just kind of get back into that now as well. So access to parks, access to bike lanes, access to public transport is, again, a strong mover of why people make that kind of lifestyle choice as well.
And in the context of that kind of infrastructure, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go through some of the headline details from the National Development Plan, but have Sherry FitzGerald, has the response come from your network of agents?
I haven't been chatting to the network of agents just on that. I suppose I've been kind of busy with the business at hand, so to speak, so I haven't had a chance to review everything just yet with all my colleagues.
Just to ask you one question. You went through, the changes in demographics and so forth as to where people are shifting to. The one area we haven't talked about so far is, and I don't know if you have much contact with it, but since you're at the coalface of retail property, what's your sense of the younger buyer who wants to get on the property ladder and can't? Are you getting any sense of frustration about that, or how is your business affected by that?
Well, actually, it's interesting. 78% of what we sold this year is to owner occupiers, and half of that will be first-time buyers.
Right.
So they are still very much active in the market.
Right.
Are they frustrated? I would say yes. And I would say probably a lot of people are frustrated because we're at a 10-year low in terms of available property. So if there was more properties available, we'd no doubt see more people buying and again, more first-time buyers. I suppose pricing has moved in such a manner that it is more difficult for people in general, first-time buyers to buy. So there will be definitely a level of frustration there. But I suppose, like a lot of things, we're working within the market that we're working within. But we can still see from our own numbers, Brian, that a lot of them are first-time buyers.
Just on that topic, Graham, it was interesting. There was an interview with the assistant governor of the Bank of Ireland there, and they were talking about reviewing the subsidy for first-time buyers. What's your attitude to that? Do you think should it be reviewed or dropped or reviewed and stay? Or what do you think?
I think anything to help with first-time buyers themselves coming into the marketplace, I think is a good thing to be looked at. I think the Help to Buy scheme in terms of new homes is a very good system. I think when we look at, say, first-time buyers, there is a gearing towards maybe new homes, which is fantastic. It really is. However, there's probably less of it towards second-hand property purchasing within the marketplace. So I do think when you look at something, you try and look at it in context and try and look at the overall piece. So if you were doing something, I think it would be helpful to have a review and have a look at it for the second-hand market as well, because there is definitely new homes obviously coming through. COVID has slowed down that process and we need to see that improve and pick up pace. However, there are existing levels of stock there for second-time buyers. And if there was some aligned help for first-time buyers in the second-hand market, I think that could be a good thing as well. But like all things, there's a balance to every approach. You don't want to make too many changes and all of a sudden we're in a kind of a market that continues to rise and actually isn't helping the first-time buyer.
And do you think that would aid inflation, having that Help to Buy, as is the argument with some at the moment?
I think with some people, they're looking at it and saying that could happen. I think it's like everything you take. It's no one silver bullet. And I think that's very important to remember when you look at all reviews of the marketplace, because one has to be careful when you review a marketplace and bring something into it. We've seen it plenty of times in our past where we've made changes and it hasn't had the right outcome. So I think it's not one silver bullet, Brian. I think it's you look at a number of different incentives that will help the overall marketplace. Yeah. And I think ultimately everybody will have a view on that. But sometimes you've got to take, sometimes it's like taking the emotion out of it and just having a look at, like, logically, what are the things that could help the buyers but not affect the overall market itself.
The law of unintended consequence, it's distinguished
where we live in.
Of all policy. Before we let you go, you just mentioned there in passing that 22% of your buyers are investors. Have you a corresponding figure? Do you know what percentage of your sellers are investors?
Well, yeah, like 78% of what we sold to have been owner-occupiers, as I said, 78% and 50% of those are first-time buyers. We're probably seeing close to 30% of investors exiting the market, so one-off landlords.
We still have that continuing trend of I suppose,
landlords, one-off landlords.
Institutional investors leaving the market.
Yeah, so that'll be close to 30% of what we're selling, and we wouldn't be seeing the same uptake in terms of the buyer side.
And so your buyers who are investors, are they buying with the intention, do you know, of renting the property out, or are they buying it almost as a second property or for an adult child? Like, do we know
if you look at some of our people who are buying for investment, some of our kind of families, mum and dad, kind of buying long-term for their kids going to college. And taking the view, and then maybe they either rent it prior to that and then rent it then after that. Some are still buying from an investment point of view. I suppose money on deposit doesn't make a lot of money. In fact, in some cases, it costs you money to have it on deposit. So there are still kind of people buying into market, but just to be clear, that nowhere near making up the shortfall in terms of the investors exiting the marketplace.
Absolutely. And look, this might be perhaps an unfair question because it relies more on sentiment, but the investors who are exiting the market, are they disclosing why?
I suppose, again, there'd be a wide variety. Some are accidental landlords, and it's just taking this amount of time to, I suppose, unwind a position so they can exit. And we'd have an awful lot of those type of people. We'd have people who are selling investment properties because it is getting harder to be a landlord within the environment we are in. And we also have people the properties are being sold because, the kids have gone to college. They've done everything the property was actually bought and intended for. Like I'd have two of them coming on now shortly, and they were both exactly the same reason. One was actually an old family home. The son lived in it. He's now bought his own place. He went to college, stayed living in it, and now bought his own place. So it's surplus to requirements. So there is a variety of issues there. But yes is the answer. Our landlords finding it harder to be a landlord than I suppose the answer would be yes.
Yeah, and look, that's been a recurring trend. Before we let you go, Graham, congratulations to the team at Sherry FitzGerald, I understand, on opening the 100th
Yes.
office.
Yeah, we opened our 100th office there in August. So we opened up in FitzGerald on the corner there, Doyle's Corner, so a very well-known spot. And so it's been hugely successful since day one. It's a very vibrant market there at the moment, big mix of kind of property types and a wide variety of purchasers as well. So 100th office, so a bit of a milestone for the company, all right.
Fantastic. Well done to the team. It's a huge milestone. Yeah. And thank you for joining us today. That was Graham Murray of Sherry FitzGerald, and we'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned.
93.9 Dublin South FM.
Welcome back to Property Matters here on Dublin South FM, and with myself, Carol Talon, and Brian Fox. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Now, we have returning guests to the show today. I'm joined by Ian Thompson and Ikenna Nweke of client or commercial tenant engagement app and office app. Guys, you're very welcome. We spoke previously. So just for people maybe who aren't familiar, you might just remind us of what Office app does.
Carol, first of all, thank you so much for having us back. We thought we blew our chances the first time, but we obviously did something well to be invited the second time around. And so what we are is we're a smart office platform. And what we do in essence is integrate with lots of different systems within the building, whether it's access control, whether it's parking sensors, we're bringing together community, where all via the one platform, they're allowing the user to really interface and do everything they need to do within the office environment in a very simple and easy to use platform. And then at the back end, having all that data, all that lovely data for landlords and corporates to really get a real understanding of how their employees, how their tenants are really interfacing with their building environment. And so they can tailor it in such a way. And that's both from a physical environment and changing the actual look and feel of the open spaces and so on and so forth, or even from a soft perspective in terms of some of the services offered within the building or within the campus.
Okay. One of the things that I'm finding really exciting at the moment, we've been doing the show for 3 years, but I've been involved through PropTech Ireland for about 5 years. And we were always talking about the potential, what the potential for the technology to do. And one of the really exciting things, if exciting is indeed the right word for a crisis, over the past 18 months, the industry has really woken up to technology because it was needed to solve problems. So talk to me about how Office app has transitioned over the past 18 months.
Yeah, and also thanks again, Carol, for having us, and Ian here. So we see a big difference, definitely. We don't as much really change our offering, but we do change aspects of our product offering that now are really far more topical. Like desk booking, like parking, all those elements that are far more topical to have and to put in the hands of the end user. So we've seen that has really been a big change and a big move forward for us. And on the other hand as well, it is a different and a slight change of tack in communication and the messaging because a lot of the real estate, what we've seen now, didn't really know what was going to happen. And we still don't, to be honest. It's a lot of qualitative elements there, not very much quantitative. But that's exactly now where we see this big push for digitalization because it needs to be starting to be quantified. Mm-hmm. We can't have this huge asset class being driven by, on one hand, the quantification of the financial side, but only the qualification of what's actually happening in the workspace and workplace. Mm-hmm. And that's changing big time now.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really trying to do over the past year or year and a half is when we talk about data, get really specific. So in terms of buildings, can you tell us, first of all, who are your clients? What type of buildings are you currently deployed across?
It's a real mix, actually, a real mixture. I mean, looking at myself, I look after primarily the UK and Ireland, although I am looking to pick up some other countries in terms of the rest of the world, as we're seeing lots of different requirements come to us. But looking specifically around the UK and Ireland, the majority of the people we're speaking to are landlords, are landlord focused. That's not to say we don't also cater for corporates. We do both. The platform can do both landlord and corporates. And so what we're seeing a lot more of, if talking about specifics in terms of some of the data, some of the data has told us things like from a user perspective, people are requiring, when they're going to the office, things like parking. And the reason for that, they want to maintain their own bubble, especially outside of locations like central London, where we all know it's very difficult to drive your car in central London in any case. But outside of that, where there's parking facilities on hand at the campus or the building, we're seeing a lot more requirements to have parking systems where individuals can book parking prior to arriving and know they're going to have something there and maintain that bubble between home and work and back again. And it's those kind of insights the data's helping us to push towards.
And in terms of occupancy, for your clients across the UK, because I think the UK is slightly ahead of Ireland in terms of opening up. We've just started to return to the office, but actually most major employers have either done a very slow and cautious phased return to the office, or actually they've put it out until January 2022. So where are you in terms of your clients? Do you have any idea about what percentage occupancy they're at?
It's a really mixed bag across the board, in all honesty. I mean, without putting any names in place, we saw the beginning of this year, we thought it was going to be maybe a Q2, Q3 in terms of people coming back into the office. And we thought numbers would be maybe around 50, 60%. What we're finding in some locations is that's now been kicked into Q1 of next year in terms of the real drive. And also the occupancy figures that we're seeing, they can range from as little as 20%, 25%, going all the way to around 45, 50%. So in general, there has been a pushback in terms of the real, return to work drive. And that I think is coupled with the government policies that are in place and so on and so forth. But also we're seeing that some people are, even though, the last time we spoke, the conversation piece was this, this technology experiential platform, it sounds interesting, but what can it do? Now it's a case of, we need you. We don't know exactly what we need. Can you help us and help with that conversation? But it's what we're finding. It's still a protracted conversation, takes a long time. And so those extra timescales, Q1 for the real return to work, is what we're seeing more and more of in terms of clients kicking that can slightly further down the track.
Yeah. And what I would say in that, what has been important, at least what we see on our side, is because we focus on both. Of course, that isn't really focused, but we believe in the value of both, meaning corporate and landlords. We're able to advise on where that stands, and also because we have a global footprint, that we have a few, especially from the corporate point of view, customers like a Shell or Finastro, which is a big fintech company, that we organize and facilitate their return to work on a global level. We're able to give our landlord customers and potential customers in that quite some advice and consultancy of what their tenants are looking for, and what the actual users, the people who want to return safely, but also now in this hybrid setup, because we've in a lot of countries already moved from return to work to hybrid working, and what will that look like? Mm-hmm. And we're able to already advise based on the big kind of companies that are our customers, who have strategies to make this central in their way of working in the future.
Mm-hmm. Ian, can you expand on that a little? Because again, this is something that here in Ireland, occupiers need to learn from. So in terms of implementing hybrid working, you mentioned there about desk booking, and even prior to COVID, we were seeing this move from traditional offices and traditional open plan offices with assigned desks to more of a desk booking. Mm-hmm. Has COVID strengthened that in either direction? Are people happy to randomly take a desk, or are they now going more for assigned? Or, is it a case that your booking system has to incorporate an element of deep cleaning or specialist cleaning? Like, how are you navigating that?
Yeah, and that's what we're actually seeing now is that it's still a combination of both. But an extra in this, I think, is knowing, and it's quite rational, really. Once you think about it, is when do you want to be in the office? You want to be in the office when you think you can be the most productive, and what does that facilitate? Certain rooms or desks needed, but also certain colleagues and or even friends in the workplace. And that combination now is what we're seeing is becoming very important. And that's where we've upped the ante on our product, and what we can actually deliver is a colleague finder, link to desk, link to locations, so you can start sitting together to be more productive, or know that your colleague, that Carol, you are in the office, and that therefore I will come to the office and book a meeting together. So all of these combinations are becoming far more important, and we do see clear indications that these functionalities, as we call them, these solutions, are the ones to move forward. But there will definitely be, we see that now, that the occupancy will definitely be different. It will be impacted, but to be honest, as you referred to as well a bit, we're already seeing this in the emergence of flexible spaces. That it wasn't only one main location, and the flexible spaces like Spaces, WeWork, etc. They were biting quite a large bit off of the market, but now we're seeing that part is also being brought in the own home. And again, that has a lot of difference and a lot of it's quite interesting insight. It depends on which cities you're in. If you have high rent, like for example Dublin, it's a lot of younger people, especially, don't have the kind of floor space to have a separate room to work in. So you see the flight more to the country or outside the cities, but you also see that the younger generations, or maybe even worse, really, but less higher salaried, which quite often goes hand in hand with being younger, are having more difficulty in actually having this hybrid setup, even though they're the ones that are looking for it. So we'll definitely see a bit of a dilemma there, and what's important is being able to know and to being able to base that on a bit of not only the qualification but also the quantification, and be proactive in its approach.
You know, that's a really interesting one, because I was thinking about, the days that you might need to travel to the office. And for our own setup here, we actually opened a rural office at the other side of the country. So to support our Dublin office, we now have a Galway office, but it's a rural Galway office, not a Galway city. But, it's interesting, actually. I hadn't considered that as you're booking time into the office, that you would need to coordinate with specific team members, because we're so used to now collaborating online that you forget that there is that need. So if you want to be in the office, that there is that need for collaboration. Is that something that your app could do prior to COVID?
I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, it's an evolution. What we as Ian said, we looked at what our clients were asking. We looked at the way they're working today, and then we make another iteration of that feature to develop it. And so, as Ian mentioned, the fact that knowing that, today, if I want to go into the office next week, rather than having to do a round robin and ask everyone, if I can just simply go on the app, see the day that I want to go in, say I want to be next to Carol because I need to work with you on a specific project, and then book the seat next to you. Then I turn up, where we can corroborate in terms of whatever work product we need to produce, and then we'll return back to the home environment. And even things like, and just to throw one at you, from conversations we're having with clients, the current situation or the current modus operandi of booking a meeting. If you think if there were 20 of us, and some of us, work for Office Apps, some of us work for another company, some of you want to be dialing to the meeting from home, and some want to be physically there. We're already starting to think as a company how to put a feature or a product that will allow someone to book that meeting, and then individuals to say whether they want to be working from home or physically coming into the meeting, and then for it to select the right meeting room size according to the people that are going to be coming in, and do all of that in a very easy, succinct way that, again, helps with that whole experiential piece that we really focus on.
Yeah, that hybrid mix of meetings as well, I think, is something that we're definitely going to have to work on to get the balance right, in terms of not just physically who's there and who can connect in by technology, but also actually making sure that people who aren't physically in the room aren't getting the short end of the straw. You know, as always happens in any committee, if you're not in the room to say no, you're an automatic yes. So there's a lot of things that we need to work out there. But before we started the interview, Ken, you and I just were speaking about maybe because I'm really interested to know the inquiries that you're getting from Ireland. And I want to know, from a selfish point of view, I want to know where the industry is at, because I've been very forthcoming by saying that, you know, we were, as a country, our industry was slow to adapt. The last 18 months has been transformative in so many ways, and many of them positive in terms of digital adoption. But in terms of the inquiries you're getting from Ireland, you know, without being indiscreet, without talking out of school, what do commercial building owners and operators think that they need?
Okay, I mean, that's a twofold question. So looking at it, first of all, the majority of inquiries are coming from what we classify as the landlords. The landlord as community have kind of woken up to the fact that they need to get in on this opportunity, as I see it. And when they are engaging with us, and we're being involved in a lot more RFPs where it's a formal tender process with lots of different platforms, a big part of it is really, you can tell as part of the RFP, is getting them educated as to what we can do, because there's still a gap there in terms of giving them an overview of what our platform can really do. And then once that understanding is there, the types of things we're seeing asked for a lot of are really focused around helping the tenant bed into that building or that ecosystem or that campus with things like access control to get into the building in a simple and easy way. But it's also a great way of getting great adoption and engagement them, because if you have to download the platform to get into the building, we're going to have lots of users, and also lots of facilities. Like there's lots of integrations we're doing with order to desk or order to meeting room food facilities, and so lots of different landlords are really pushing that to the forefront as a differentiator. And then also the big one is community. You know, making a really sticky community platform with lots of cool things on there, whether it's coupons where you can get stuff for free, whether it's events where you can pay for events, or it can be free events, and really see who's going in terms of the community, and so on and so forth. So creating a really sticky environment that people want to actually jump into and utilize, that helps them work, rest, and play, to use a Mars adjective.
Okay, actually, there's a lot of what you've said there, and I have a couple of different inquiries around that. One, from I suppose, to benefit the startups listening. You know, you mentioned there about an education process that has to happen with clients, that there is a gap maybe in the understanding of the industry as to what your offering is. So from a communications point of view, one of the things that I've seen not just startups, but technology providers do is when the offering is too broad, people fail to understand it. And has that, you know, and through your app, it sounds quite broad. So in terms of communicating the core messaging, is that difficult? Do you need to break that down on a client by client basis based on really what their immediate needs are?
I'll answer this first, and Ian, if you want to jump in as well. We use the strap line to make it very simple, the single source of truth. And that really resonates with clients in terms of lots of different silos of data points that aren't talking to each other, and it's very hard to make sense of when you look at them individually. We are that spine that comes into the building that you can connect loads of these different things, whether it's access control, whether it's parking, whether it's a community. And having all of that in one place really helps understand from a data perspective how best to move that building forward in terms of some of the facilities and some of the experiences you're trying to create for whether it be employees or tenants.
I love that you're using the term single source of truth, because you know that's actually that is the basis for the Unisu platform, and that's actually where the name comes from. You know, because it is a single source of truth for essentially for the technology feeding into the built environment. So actually, I think that's a really good core place to be starting from. You know, the other thing you just mentioned there in terms of, you know, people having to download the platform. In order, you know, your app, does it need to be downloaded? Can it be accessed through web app? Does it? Do all users need to download it on their phones?
to get the most out of what we know, first of all, we look at the data to say how are users interacting with our platform. Most are interacting it via a handheld device. That's just one of the facts there. And so really to get the best out of it, and we try to look at it from the point of view as the point of least resistance. So if you're physically coming into a building today using a plaque to swipe in and out, all we're saying is, and we'll provide we've got a whole team that will help with the digital launch into any particular building. We even have events and competitions to incentivize people to want to actually download the platform. So it's as painless as possible in terms of actually doing that. And then once you're on there, as I've mentioned, with all these, some of these great things that we're doing, whether it's events, being able to understand and even from the point of view of campuses where you've got different businesses on there, all of a sudden being able to cross-pollinize and know your different people that weren't working with you to understand who they are, what they're doing, and really create a much more cohesive community. It's almost like a little thing as a hurdle at the beginning to get over to get all the benefits at the back end.
Do you think this industry does community well?
I'll definitely take that one. I don't think we do as an industry. It's seen as a bit of a necessity, and on its own, and that's what we've seen because Carol, you're absolutely right. We are really the opposite of focused, but in a good way. But what that means, for example, for us. And that's where we've always taken not a short-term perspective, but a longer-term perspective on this. What it means, for example, that the community cannot live without an access control or a room booking, or now where you see a colleague finder or desk booking or health and safety check-ins, all the things that are very relevant now. And in the next steps forward, it will be ESG elements as well. But all of that feeds together to work as one and makes sure that it's used a lot. So the adoption engagement is very high on our platform. And therefore, we can also start being the more consultative seller or consultative / advisor to our customers. So just coming right back to your answer or to your question there, I don't think we do community well because it can't work on its own.
Mm-hmm. And also to kind of second what Ian said, what I'm seeing in terms of requirements or requests from clients actually is, can you offer much more support in terms of your teams with things like sourcing events for us and curating even the actual, even the images that potentially would be pushed onto the platform. We're seeing a lot more of that being asked because you're absolutely right. The community as a whole, the sector as a whole, isn't fantastic at doing the community piece.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think it's very telling, probably of the pandemic, that it's taken us 20 minutes to actually touch on the subject of ESG, because I would imagine prior to COVID, that was one of the strongest drivers.
Definitely, and it still is. It still is a very strong driver with the bigger both corporate customers and landlord customers. Of course, there's a big push from all their institutional lenders to do this in the next years / decennia. So there are, and I think that really is this to get COVID together with the underlying push on ESG, where you can also use community. But it's not only about building in a more efficient way. It's also about communicating of what you've done and being able to influence or the behavior around in the workspace around being more environmentally social. The governance is a little bit more difficult, but the environmental and social are definitely elements where Office app is also being used as a driver, especially on the end user point of view. And then together with hybrid working, I think there are some hugely huge macro trends driving us forward on this.
Well, talk us through some of those trends.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think, having named two already with hybrid working, as I said before, just maybe revisiting. It's not about mostly in most countries at the moment. It's not about return to work anymore. It's already gone to hybrid working. So that one will be a big push, especially now on the corporate side, getting your employees back to work / the war on talent, which is bigger than ever. which also has a link to ESG. A lot of the very mindful new workforce coming in, where you do have to find a good position on your, especially environmental, but also social setup. But that pushing that forward, and the landlord following in that as well, because the landlord now has to understand more and more of what's happening in this workspace, and not depend as much on the property managers / third parties. So that's where we see a lot of, and that was already starting, a lot of direct a direct relationship with the data that we offer, and then therefore how landlords and their tenants are pushing this forward, and ESG, of course, as well. And we're at the beginning of that. And those two elements really are now the ESG on, I'd say, a slightly longer term perspective, but the hybrid working is moving into that as one total to really accelerate the digitalization of the real estate.
You know, there's a lot in what you've mentioned there, and one of the things that you talk about is the importance of landlords understanding, what a changed workplace is going to look like. But that seems like an incredibly tall order right now, when frankly there's just no way of knowing what, how humans are going to respond. We've already seen over the past 18 months that, surveys that were carried out, maybe quarterly, that there was this huge appreciation of working from home. And then there was this almost resistance to working from home. And, so we're still at the stage where actually when we return to the office or to the workplaces, how safe are people going to feel? Because I don't know what it's like internationally, but in Ireland, employers are not allowed to ask if employees are vaccinated. So therefore they have to work on the assumption that they are not, even though, close to 90% of the adult population now is doubly vaccinated. Employers have to take the position that they're not, because they're not allowed to ask, and they have to default. So how is that working internationally?
Yeah, so here as well, and I think at the moment and for the short term, it will very much be qualitative. How do people feel? And I think that is a very important aspect of that, because it will be quite psychological. It could be quite psychological as well. But what now we're seeing, because of the introduction of platforms like ourselves, it's going off only the qualification to more of the quantification as well. And this will take a bit of time, but now we already for some of our customers, one is for example Colliers in Poland, where we're helping them to plan how that return of work will work, based on the amount of bookings that will be done, not only on desk booking, but also on the access, on room booking, all bringing this all together to then predict what that will look like and where that will level off. And I think as well, which will have even more impact, is when. Meaning not exactly when everyone will be back, but when are the different services, the different functionalities, meeting room desks being used, Monday versus Tuesday, Tuesday versus Friday. And we're getting a lot of information now on that, a lot of data on that, to really be able to predict quantitatively, so securely, on how that return to work will be. So this, I think, now will be the next big step in the next 6 months, where everyone is looking to quantify it, and then we'll be stepping away from a lot of I think it'll be 30%, or I think it'll be 70%, and we'll have a lot more numbers in the market.
Yeah, thank you. Kind of before we finish up, I'd love to just know your opinion there in terms of trust and technology, because the real estate has a trust problem. It's had a technology problem. Could it be that technology could actually become one of the tools for rebuilding trust for the industry and its users?
It's a very good question you pose, actually, a really good one. And, I've worked in property for the last, in one guise or another, maybe for 12, 13 years now. And when I first came in, even up to now, until recently, my whole outlook on properties, it's quite opaque as an industry. It's almost like a dark art. How do they quantify buildings in RICS in terms of pounds and pence and why and so on? And something goes at this end, it comes out completely different at the other. And I do think there is a place for technology, and it absolutely can. And in its many different guises, whether it's blockchain, where you can fully understand all the different adaptations of a building and being in one place is incorruptible. So it will help with the buying and selling process, whether it's looking at quantitative data rather than the asset manager who kind of on a Friday will do this after speaking with just one individual for the company, having all that data that fully tells you what's happening, why, and will allow you to make the informed decision as to what you need to change. Before it was very based on a person's understanding. I think now it can be much more precise and based on quantitative data, and I think that can only help with creating much more trust within the property industry.
Well, that and maybe getting some case studies that can really inspire the industry as well. And I think that's something that maybe the prop tech sector haven't been great at doing and need to do an awful lot more. So it's something that I hope if you guys are undertaking projects like that are you doing that? Are you actually releasing case studies maybe of buildings that you're operating in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've got some great case studies. You may have even heard of, just throw one in the mix, and I'll give you one here. You can ask you for names. We're working with a developer, a middle cap, on a great project in Southwark. And, that has got some rave reviews in terms of the Europe's smartest building, certified by SBC. And, it really helps in terms of positioning that building compared to others in that geographical location of London. And even with things like the leasing program, with the agents able to potentially show potential tenants of the building how this particular building has been flooded with technology and some of those benefits. It drew in a much more technological focused type of tenant base because they've started to get leases signed, and also it helped with in terms of reducing the leasing cycle in terms of getting someone interested in signing. And then lastly, it even helps. This particular landlord took the view of flooding the whole, whether it's the landlord space or the client space, the whole ecosystem. So the potential tenant would turn up and say, okay, this is what I get as part of the lease, including this platform that is wired to allow me to book X, Y, and Z. And what we were seeing is even helping with things like service charge costs and so on in terms of embedding that in there. So it's a great story. We're telling it.
Excellent. And hopefully, I think that we need to be telling this story louder. We need to be sharing it wider,
Definitely.
And that's certainly something that we'd like to do. And we might get onto that another day. But for now, thank you both. That was Ian Thompson and Ikenna Nweke of Commercial Tenant Experience App, Office App. That's it from us this week. Thank you for listening. It's Property Matters on Dublin South FM. You can get in touch with the show on social media at iProperty Radio or by emailing hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound. We're back at the same time next week. From Brian Fox and myself, Carol Talon. Stay safe.